Brian Kelly's lawyers are seeking a declaratory judgment based on a fact that Brian Kelly was terminated without cause. That is a major, major thing when it comes to all of these college coaches, all of these managers and NBA coaches, any coach. The fights that we've talked about on this show, from John Gruden to John Holmes, all are about when the firing happens, what does it sound like? Does it sound like you're fired? But what does it read like? You are fired because you were accused of and convicted of a crime. You are fired because your team stinks. You are fired because you did not represent this organization in a first-class manner because we saw you at Flash Dancers. The language that you use, which is why you never fire anyone one-on-one, you always have a third person in the room, HR, why you put things in writing, is because how you fire someone is a very big deal. The argument that LSU and Brian Kelly are in right now is LSU is claiming we fired you for cause. And the firing for cause was based on your behavior. And therefore, we don't owe you the rest of your contract. Because every contract that all of you sign, if you've ever signed a contract, no matter what you do for a living, there is going to be a provision in there that is termination. And under termination, it'll say for cause or without cause, with cause, without cause. It'll list all sorts of things. And you may think you only want to negotiate the term section of your contract, how long it lasts, how much money you're getting paid. Trust me, focus on the termination clauses because you're going to need them one day. Terminating for cause. Don't play basketball if you're a player. Don't go skiing if you're a player. These are baseball ones. Do not go skydiving, any athlete. Do not do anything that puts your body into second-class shape. You must maintain first-class conditioning. There are a list, and they get negotiated really hard. Why? Because of right now. The fight that's going to happen between Brian Kelly and LSU, and the reason why it matters, think about $54 million. If Brian Kelly's owed $54 million going forward under the contract he signed, and he is terminated without cause, he gets that money. But if he's fired for cause, he doesn't get any of the money. That is a major issue, but it's only one issue that LSU is dealing with right now as it relates to that $54 million. The second issue is something that's come up now with a bunch of different contracts of a bunch of different people who have been recently terminated, and it's called the liquidated damages clause. I used to call it in contracts the mitigation requirement. And that is a very highly negotiated provision as well. Mitigation is when you're owed $100 by somebody and you are let go. And therefore, there is a argument of, are you getting the full $100 or not? And the not comes when you have a mitigation clause that says, listen, you are a newspaper delivery person. I am firing you. I owe you $100, but you have a duty to mitigate. You have a duty to go to another newspaper delivery company and get hired and get paid. And whatever you get paid, you can't double dip, because if you get paid $10, I'm only giving you $90. You're never going to get more than the $100 you were going to get from me. And if we can get more than one person to pay for it, that would be great. When you don't have a duty to mitigate, you can take $100 from your current company, go get paid $10 from the next company, and then all of a sudden you're making $110, and then you're super happy that you got terminated because you've increased your pay by 10%. Another clause that needs to be highly negotiated by an agent with a team. There's several levels of mitigation. Take a coach. Sometimes a coach signs a contract that says you've got a duty to mitigate. You must try to find another head coaching job in college football. That's not a very heavy burden because it's easy not to get hired as a head coach somewhere. Sometimes the duty to mitigate says you must look for a job where you'll be an offensive or defensive coordinator or a special teams coach. There could be a duty to mitigate for a head coach that goes all the way down to being an equipment manager. But smart coaches would never agree to that. Smart coaches would say, the only duty to mitigate I have is if I take another job as a college coach in your conference. NFL head coaches, duty to mitigate. As a head coach, as a coordinator, there are certain contracts where your duty to mitigate has nothing to do with the area in which you work. If you are a football coach, your duty to mitigate could be to be a toll booth collector or an order taker at McDonald's. No head coach I know would ever sign that, but that is a global mitigation clause where you have mitigation requirements because you can't sit on your tuchus after we fire you. You've got to go back to work. What is way more likely, and the reason why there were so many negotiations around this mitigation, is that LSU and Brian Kelly had a contract that was very clear that mitigation was about becoming a head coach. And Brian Kelly was saying to himself, I'm going to sit and eat good and plenty. And I'm going to take my $54 million because I'm tired. I'd like a bunch of years off. This would be a perfect opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. When you are the organization that is doing the paying, you can meet with the employee who you are terminating as part of the termination and negotiate right then and there. You've got no duty to mitigate. We will pay you every 2 weeks for the next 6 years, and you're going to get your $54 million. What would you say if we gave you $30 million right now? Right now. You don't have to wait around for every 2 weeks. We're going to give it to you, and we'll separate, do whatever you want to do. We won't have to argue about duty to mitigate. We don't have to argue about anything. That is a very common argument, a very common negotiation. And the reason why it becomes a negotiation is a university, much like a business, is much better served capitalizing the entire expense of the terminated employee and bringing it all into the current year and just being done with it.